A black woman in torn jeans and a faded gray hoodie walked across the polished marble floor of the most exclusive luxury car dealership in Houston. The fluorescent lights bounced off the hoods of cars that cost more than most people earned in a decade. Ferraris, Bentleys. A matte black Rolls-Royce Phantom sat near the front window like a sleeping animal, and she walked past all of it as if she belonged there. Because she did. No one knew that yet. No one would know for another 47 minutes. But by the time the truth came out, three men in expensive suits would be standing in a parking lot holding cardboard boxes, wondering how their entire careers had collapsed in less than an hour. Her name was Imani Caldwell, and she owned the building they were all standing in. She owned 34 more just like it across 12 states. But this morning, she did not look like a billionaire. She had spent 2 hours preparing for this exact moment. She had pulled her natural hair into a messy bun under a stained baseball cap. She had borrowed sneakers from her gardener, the kind with the sole peeling away from the toe. She had smudged a little dirt on the back of her hands. She had left her diamond earrings, her platinum watch, and her wedding ring in a small velvet box back home. The only thing she carried was a worn leather wallet containing exactly $42 in cash and a driver's license that said her name was Imani C. Brooks. Brooks had been her mother's last name before her mother married a man who left them both when Imani was 4 years old. She had used that name many times before. It was her name for moments like this. For tests. 3 weeks ago, an email had landed in the inbox of Caldwell Automotive Group's anonymous ethics reporting system. It came from a former employee, a young black salesman named Andre Williams who had quit the Houston flagship dealership 6 months earlier. The email was 4 pages long. It described in painful detail what it was like to work under the general manager of that location, a man named Brett Donovan. It described how customers who did not look wealthy were ignored, mocked, or escorted out. It described how black customers were quietly steered toward the used inventory in the back lot, while white customers with the same credit scores were shown the showroom floor. It described a culture so rotten that Andre said he could not sleep at night anymore knowing he had participated in it just to keep his job. He had ended the email with a single line. "I know the company that bears your family name does not stand for this, Mrs. Caldwell. I am writing to you because I still believe that." Imani had read the email 7 times. She had cried at her desk. Then she had picked up the phone and called her chief operating officer and told her to clear her schedule for the rest of the month. Now, here she was, standing in the middle of Brett Donovan's showroom dressed like the kind of customer his employees had been trained to ignore. She paused near a champagne-colored Maserati and ran her fingertip lightly along the chrome trim. A young white salesman in a navy suit glanced up from his desk. His eyes moved over her quickly. Sneakers, stained hoodie, cap pulled low. He looked back down at his computer screen without a word. He did not approach. He did not smile. He did not even nod in greeting. A second salesman walked past her carrying a coffee. He did not look at her at all. Imani waited. She walked deeper into the showroom. She stopped in front of the Rolls-Royce Phantom by the window. She bent down slightly and peered through the driver's side window, the way a curious child might look into a candy store. The interior was cream-colored leather stitched by hand in England. She knew this because she had personally signed the purchase order on this exact vehicle 4 months ago. A third salesman, older this time, maybe 50, with silver hair and a tie clip shaped like a tiny golf club, walked toward her. For a moment she thought he was finally going to ask if she needed help. He did not. He walked right past her and tapped on the glass door of the corner office, where the blinds were half drawn. Through the gap in the blinds, she could see a man at a wide oak desk leaning back in his chair, scrolling on his phone. The silver-haired salesman said something Imani could not hear. The man at the desk glanced up, looked through the blinds directly at her and frowned. Then he laughed. He laughed at her, from across his own showroom floor. Imani Caldwell smiled softly and kept her eyes on the rolls. She had been waiting 8 minutes. The clock was just beginning. The door of the corner office swung open. The man behind the desk stepped out, adjusting his cufflinks like a king preparing to meet a peasant. Brett Donovan was 46 years old, 6'2", with the kind of tan that came from weekends on a boat he could not actually afford. He had been the general manager of the Houston flagship dealership for 9 years. He had built a small empire of cronies and yes-men around him. He believed, deep in his bones, that he was untouchable. He walked across the showroom floor with the silver-haired salesman trailing behind him like a loyal dog. He stopped about 10 feet from Imani and crossed his arms over his chest. "Ma'am," he said. The word was polite. The tone was not. "Can I help you find something?" Imani straightened up slowly from the Rolls-Royce. She turned to face him. She kept her expression soft, almost shy. "I was just looking," she said quietly. "It's a beautiful car." "It's a $400,000 car," Brett said. He let the number hang in the air like a punch. "Are you looking to purchase today?" "I might be." The silver-haired salesman snorted. He did not even try to hide it. Brett's mouth twitched into a smile he was trying to contain. "Ma'am," Brett said again, slower this time, the way you might speak to a child. "This is a luxury dealership. The vehicles on this floor start at $180,000 before tax, before financing. I just want to make sure you understand that before you waste any more of your time or mine." Imani tilted her head slightly. "I understand." Brett's jaw tightened. He had expected her to apologize and leave. He had expected her to shrink. Most people did when he used that voice. The silver-haired salesman beside him shifted his weight, uncertain now. "Do you have a pre-approval letter from a bank?" Brett asked. "No." "Do you have a trade-in?" "No." "Do you have any form of proof of income?" "Not on me." Brett exhaled through his nose. He looked over his shoulder at the young salesman in the navy suit who was watching the whole exchange with a small smirk. Brett turned back to Imani. "Then let me be very clear with you," he said. "I have 3 customers coming in this afternoon with appointments, real customers. So I'm going to ask you politely to stop wasting my time and leave the showroom. There's a CarMax about 4 miles down the highway. They might have something more in your price range." The words landed in the quiet showroom like a stone dropped into still water. The young salesman at the desk stopped pretending to type. A woman in the finance office glanced up through her glass partition. Even the silver-haired salesman looked slightly uncomfortable now, his smirk fading. Imani did not move. She looked at Brett Donovan for a long moment. She studied his face the way a doctor studies an X-ray. She saw the small flare of his nostrils, the slight tremble in his right hand that he was trying to control. The way his eyes kept darting toward the corner office, where he wanted to return to his phone and his comfortable chair. This was the man Andre Williams had described. This was the man who had made a young black salesman feel so worthless that he had quit a job he loved. "What is your name?" Imani asked. Brett blinked. The question caught him off guard. "Excuse me." "Your name, what is it?" "Brett Donovan. I'm the general manager." "Now if you would please, Brett Donovan," she repeated, as if memorizing it. "Thank you." She did not move toward the door. She walked instead toward the leather waiting chairs near the coffee station. She sat down, she crossed her legs, she folded her hands in her lap, and she looked up at Brett Donovan with the calm patience of a woman who had all the time in the world. "I'll wait," she said. "Wait for what?" "For someone to help me." Brett's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. He took a step toward her, then stopped himself. He could not physically remove her. He could not call the police on a woman who was simply sitting in a chair. He looked around the showroom. 2 other customers had walked in during the exchange, a white couple in their 50s, and they were watching the whole scene with growing discomfort. Brett forced a thin smile. "Suit yourself," he said, "but no one is going to help you." He turned and walked back to his office. The silver-haired salesman followed. The young salesman in the navy suit returned to his computer. Imani sat in the chair. She looked at her watch. 11 minutes. The minutes passed slowly. Imani sat perfectly still in the leather chair, her hands folded, her eyes calm. She watched the showroom move around her like a stage play she had seen many times before. The white couple in their 50s was approached within 90 seconds of walking in. A young saleswoman with a bright smile offered them coffee, water, sparkling lemonade. She walked them toward a silver Bentley and began describing the hand-stitched leather. The husband nodded. The wife laughed at something the saleswoman said. No one offered Imani anything. She had become invisible in a way that was almost impressive. Salesmen walked past her chair as if it were empty. One of them, a tall man with a thin mustache, actually set his coffee cup down on the small table beside her, took a phone call, finished it, picked his coffee back up and walked away without ever once making eye contact with the woman sitting 18 inches from his elbow. Imani had experienced this before, many times, but it still amazed her how complete the erasure could be, how thoroughly a person could be unseen. At minute 17, a door opened at the back of the showroom. A young black woman stepped out carrying a stack of folders. She was maybe 25 years old, with locks pulled back into a neat ponytail and a name tag that read Jasmine. She was walking quickly toward the finance office when her eyes happened to fall on the woman sitting alone in the waiting chair. Jasmine stopped. She looked at Imani. Really looked. Not the quick assessment that the others had done. Not the dismissal. She looked at the woman in the stained hoodie sitting alone in a showroom full of people who were pretending she did not exist, and something in her face shifted. She walked over. "Hi," Jasmine said softly. "I'm so sorry. Has anyone helped you yet?" Imani looked up. For the first time since walking through the front door, she allowed a small, genuine smile to reach her eyes. "Not yet." Jasmine glanced over her shoulder at the salesmen scattered around the floor. Her jaw set in a way that told Imani everything she needed to know about what it was like to work in this building. "I'm with the finance department," Jasmine said, "so I don't usually do sales. But if you tell me what you're looking for, I can at least answer some questions for you. Would that be okay?" "That would be very kind." Jasmine pulled over a second chair and sat down across from her. She set her folders on the floor. "What kind of car were you thinking about?" "I like the Phantom by the window." Jasmine's eyes widened just slightly. Then she smiled. There was no judgment in the smile, no suspicion, just warmth. "It's a beautiful car," Jasmine said. "Would you like me to walk you through some of the features?" "I would love that." Jasmine stood up and offered her hand. Imani took it. Together they walked across the showroom toward the Rolls-Royce. Behind them, Brett Donovan's office door cracked open. He watched through the gap in the blinds, his face slowly hardening. For the next 9 minutes, Jasmine gave Imani the kind of tour that most customers paid extra for. She opened the driver's door. She explained the Starlight headliner. She talked about the bespoke options, the lambswool floor mats, the privacy curtains in the rear cabin. She did not once ask Imani about her income. She did not once mention price. She treated her like a customer, like a person. At one point, Imani asked, "What is it like to work here, Jasmine?" Jasmine paused. Her hand rested on the door handle of the Rolls. She looked at the woman in the stained hoodie and seemed to weigh something inside herself. "It's a job," she said carefully. "That is not an answer." Jasmine glanced toward Brett's office. Then she looked back at Imani. "It's hard," she said quietly. "Some days it's very hard." Imani nodded. She did not push further. She did not need to. Brett's office door swung open. He walked out fast, his face set in a tight, controlled fury. He crossed the showroom in long strides and stopped beside the Rolls-Royce. "Jasmine," he said. The single word was a warning. Jasmine straightened. "Mr. Donovan, I was just my office." "Now." Imani turned slowly. She looked at Brett Donovan, and for the first time since walking through the door, the softness left her face entirely. Jasmine's hand tightened around the door handle of the Rolls-Royce. She looked at Brett. Then she looked at Imani. Then she looked back at Brett with a steadiness that surprised even her. "I'll be there in a minute, Mr. Donovan. I'm helping a customer." "She is not a customer," Brett said. His voice was low now, the kind of low that was meant to be heard by everyone in the room. "She is loitering, and you are off the clock for that conversation. My office. Now." The showroom went still. The young saleswoman who had been showing the Bentley to the older couple paused mid-sentence. The husband and wife exchanged an uncomfortable glance. The silver-haired salesman appeared at the corner of the showroom, watching with that same faint smirk he had worn earlier. The young man in the navy suit had stopped pretending to type entirely. Jasmine did not move. "With respect, sir, she asked me questions about the Phantom and I was answering them." "That's literally what we're supposed to do." "With respect," Brett said, mimicking her tone with an ugly little twist, You work in finance, you don't sell cars on this floor, and you certainly don't waste 45 minutes of a workday on someone who walked in off the street looking like that. So I'm going to ask you one more time. My office. Now. Imani watched the young woman in front of her. She watched Jasmine's jaw tighten. She watched her eyes flick toward the front door, then toward the finance office, then back to Brett. Imani knew what was happening inside her. She knew the calculation, the rent, the student loans, the car payment. The little sister Jasmine probably helped support. The thousand small reasons people stayed quiet when they should have spoken. Jasmine took a breath. She turned to Imani. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "I have to go, but please don't leave. I'll come back as soon as I can." "Thank you, Jasmine," Imani said. "You were very kind." Jasmine walked away. Brett watched her go, then turned to face the woman in the stained hoodie. His patience was gone. His tan looked blotchier under the showroom lights. "I asked you politely to leave," he said, "twice. And instead of leaving, you pulled one of my employees off the floor and wasted her time too. So now I'm telling you, get out of my showroom, right now. Or I am calling the police and reporting you for trespassing." The white couple by the Bentley had stopped pretending not to listen. The wife was holding her husband's arm. Her face had gone pale. Imani looked at Brett Donovan for a long, quiet moment. "You called this your showroom," she said. "That's right. You said that twice. Because it is." Imani nodded slowly, as if filing that information somewhere very specific in her mind. Then she reached into the pocket of her stained hoodie. Brett tensed. The silver-haired salesman took a small step back. The young salesman in the navy suit half rose from his chair. She pulled out a phone, a simple black phone, nothing flashy. She tapped the screen once and held it to her ear. "What are you doing?" Brett demanded. "Who are you calling?" Imani did not answer him. The line connected on the first ring. "Marcus," she said. Her voice had changed. It was no longer soft. It was no longer shy. It was the voice of a woman who had built 35 dealerships across 12 states from the ground up. "I'm at the Houston flagship. I need you here, now, and bring the legal team." There was a pause on the other end. Then a man's voice, crisp and professional, said, "Yes, ma'am, we're 17 minutes out, already moving." She ended the call. She slipped the phone back into her pocket. Brett Donovan stood frozen in front of her. His mouth opened slightly. Closed, opened again. The arrogance that had filled his face only seconds before was leaking out of him like air from a punctured tire. "Who?" he said, and his voice cracked slightly on the word. "Who are you?" Imani did not answer. She walked past him. She walked back to the leather chair by the coffee station. She sat down. She crossed her legs. She folded her hands in her lap. "I told you," she said. "I'll wait." Brett stared at her. Behind him, the silver-haired salesman had gone very quiet. The young man in the navy suit was looking at his phone with sudden, frantic attention. The white couple was edging toward the door. 16 minutes. The clock was ticking down. For the next 14 minutes, the showroom became a strange kind of theater. Brett Donovan retreated to his office, but he did not close the door this time. He stood just inside the doorway, watching Imani through the gap, his phone pressed to his ear. He was making calls. Imani could not hear what he was saying, but she could read the panic in his shoulders. He paced. He ran his hand through his hair. He looked at his computer screen, then back at the woman in the hoodie sitting calmly in his lobby. The silver-haired salesman, whose name tag Imani could now read from across the room, Gregory Hansen, had retreated to a small huddle near the parts counter with 2 other employees. They were whispering. They kept glancing at her. One of them was pulling something up on his phone, scrolling, frowning, scrolling again. Imani could guess what he was searching. The owner of Caldwell Automotive Group. Imani Caldwell. Images. Photographs. Trying to match the woman in the chair to the woman in the press releases. He would not find a match easily. Imani rarely allowed her photograph to be taken. The few that existed showed her in tailored suits, with her hair styled, with her diamond studs and her platinum watch. She looked nothing like the woman sitting 18 feet away from them in a stained hoodie and a baseball cap. But there were other photos he might find. Older ones. From charity galas. From the rare interview she had given to a business journal 7 years ago when the company crossed $2 billion in annual revenue. If he scrolled long enough, he might find one. And the moment he did, Imani knew the floor of this dealership was going to drop out beneath them. She watched him scroll. She watched his face. She saw the exact moment his thumb stopped moving. His mouth fell open. He looked up from the phone. He looked at her, really looked. He looked back down at the phone. He held it up beside his line of sight, comparing. And then his face went a color that Imani had only ever seen on a corpse. He grabbed Gregory Hansen by the elbow and turned the phone toward him. Gregory looked. Gregory's mouth opened the same way. He turned and looked at Imani. He turned back to the phone. "Oh my God," he said. He said it loud enough that Imani heard it from across the room. Jasmine had not come back yet. Imani wondered where Brett had sent her. To back office probably, to wait, to be dealt with later. She would not be dealt with later. Imani was going to make sure of that. The front doors of the dealership opened. 3 people walked in. A tall black man in a charcoal suit. A middle-aged white woman with short gray hair carrying a leather briefcase. A younger Asian woman in a navy blazer with a tablet under her arm. They moved with the quiet authority of people who had done this many times before. They did not look at the cars. They did not look at the salesman. They walked directly to the woman in the stained hoodie sitting in the leather chair by the coffee station. The tall black man reached her first. He did not bow. He did not make a show of it. He simply stopped in front of her and inclined his head slightly. "Mrs. Caldwell." The single word hit the showroom like a physical blow. "Mrs. Caldwell." The silver-haired salesman dropped his phone. It clattered on the marble floor. Brett Donovan stepped out of his office. He took 2 steps toward them and then stopped as if he had walked into an invisible wall. Imani stood up. The transformation was subtle but complete. She did not change her clothes. She did not remove the cap. She did not need to. The woman who had been sitting in that chair, soft and shy and patient, was simply no longer there. In her place stood a different woman entirely. A woman with a straight spine and a steady gaze and the absolute calm of someone who had just been handed back her power. "Marcus," she said, "thank you for coming." Marcus Whitfield was her chief operating officer. He had worked beside her for 11 years. He was one of the 4 people in the world who knew about her tests. "Mrs. Caldwell," Marcus said, "I have legal counsel and HR with me. We're ready when you are." She turned. She looked at Brett Donovan across the showroom. "I'm ready," she said. Brett Donovan tried to speak. His mouth moved, but no sound came out for the first 3 seconds. When his voice finally returned, it had climbed half an octave. "Mrs. Caldwell, I had no idea. I am so sorry. Please let me apologize properly. There has clearly been a terrible misunderstanding here, and if you'll just step into my office, we can." "Your office," Imani said quietly. Brett froze. "Twice in the last hour you called this your showroom. Now you are offering me your office. Please continue, Mr. Donovan. I am very interested in hearing what else you believe belongs to you." Brett's face went the color of old paper. He took a small step backward and his hip bumped against the corner of a glass display case. A stack of brochures slid to the floor. He did not bend to pick them up. He did not seem to notice. Marcus Whitfield turned to the woman with the gray hair. "Patricia, would you set up in the conference room on the 2nd floor? We will need all personnel files, performance reviews, customer complaint records, and the internal ethics reports from the last 36 months. Pull everything." "Yes, sir." The Asian woman with the tablet was already typing. "I am pulling sales data by salesperson and customer demographic now, Mrs. Caldwell. I will have a preliminary breakdown within 20 minutes. Thank you, Lynn." Imani walked across the showroom. She walked past the Maserati. She walked past the Bentley where the older white couple was still standing, frozen, their saleswoman beside them with a coffee cup shaking slightly in her hand. Imani stopped in front of the couple and gave them a small, warm smile. "I apologize that your visit has been interrupted. Please continue your conversation with Ms. Reyes. Your purchase today, if you decide to make one, will receive a 15% discount as my personal thank you for your patience." The wife actually put her hand to her mouth. The husband said, "Ma'am, you don't have to." "I do," Imani said gently. "Hospitality is the entire promise of this business. You came in expecting to be treated well, and instead you have witnessed something deeply unpleasant. I am very sorry for that." She moved on. She walked toward the corner office. Brett scrambled to follow her, then realized she was not going into his office. She was walking past it. She was walking toward the small hallway that led to the back administrative wing, where she knew Jasmine would be sitting in a back room, probably staring at a wall, probably already drafting her resignation letter in her head. "Mrs. Caldwell," Brett called after her. He was almost jogging now. "Please, just one moment, I want to explain. The way I spoke to you out there I had no way of knowing." Imani stopped walking. She turned around slowly. She looked at Brett Donovan, and when she spoke her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. The entire showroom had gone silent, listening. "That is exactly the problem, Mr. Donovan. Ma'am, you said you had no way of knowing who I was. That is your defense. That is the apology you are constructing in your head right now. If only you had known I was the owner. If only you had recognized me. If only my hoodie had been cleaner, my shoes nicer, my hair done. Then you would have treated me differently." She took a slow step toward him. "That is not an apology, Mr. Donovan. That is a confession." Brett's mouth opened, closed. "You are telling me that the way you treat human beings in this building depends entirely on whether you think they have money. You are telling me that dignity, in your worldview, is something a person earns by looking the right way. And you are telling me this as if it should make me feel better." She held his eyes. "It does not make me feel better. It makes me understand exactly what kind of manager you have been for the last 9 years. And it makes me understand exactly what kind of damage you have done to this dealership, to its employees, to its customers, and to the name on the side of this building." Brett's hands had begun to shake. He clasped them in front of him to hide it. Imani turned away from him. She continued down the hallway toward the back room. She had one more person to see before the real work began. She had a promise to make to a young woman named Jasmine. The back room was small and beige. A round table, 4 chairs, a water cooler in the corner that hummed quietly. Jasmine sat in one of the chairs with her hands folded on top of a manila folder. She had not opened the folder. She was simply staring at it. Her ponytail had loosened slightly. Her name tag was crooked. She looked up when the door opened. She saw the woman in the stained hoodie standing in the doorway with 3 people in business attire behind her. Her face did not understand at first. Then slowly it began to. Imani stepped into the room. She closed the door behind her. She left Marcus and the legal team in the hallway. "May I sit down, Jasmine?" Jasmine nodded once. She did not seem to be able to speak. Imani pulled out the chair across from her. She sat. She took off the baseball cap and set it on the table. Her natural hair, still pulled back, framed a face that Jasmine was now studying with growing comprehension. "My name is Imani Caldwell," she said softly. "I own this dealership. I own the building it sits in. I own 34 others like it. I am very sorry that you have had to work here under the conditions that you have." Jasmine's hand moved up to her mouth. Her eyes filled fast, the way eyes do when a person has been holding something in for a very long time and is suddenly given permission to let it go. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You were the only person on that showroom floor who treated me like a human being. Do you understand what that means?" Jasmine shook her head because she did not trust her voice. "It means that everything I needed to know about this building I learned from you in 9 minutes. Not from Mr. Donovan, not from Mr. Hanson, not from any of the men in suits out there. From you." A tear slipped down Jasmine's cheek. She wiped it away quickly with the back of her hand. "I thought I was about to be fired," she said. Her voice came out thin. "When he told me to go to his office, I thought that's it. That's the one. I help one person who doesn't look right and I'm gone. How many times has that almost happened?" Jasmine let out a small, broken laugh. "Too many. Tell me." And Jasmine did. For the next 12 minutes she told her everything. She told her about the unwritten rules, the way certain customers were greeted at the door and others were left to stand, the way Brett would announce loudly in the break room which customers were tire kickers and which were real, the way real almost always meant white, the way Andre Williams, the salesman who had written the email, had been mocked and undermined and finally pushed into quitting after he tried to sell a Bentley to a black couple from Louisiana who were paying cash. The way Brett had reassigned that sale to Gregory Hanson 5 minutes before the signing. The way Andre's commission had been cut in half. The way Andre had sat in his car in the parking lot afterward and cried. Imani listened without interrupting. She did not take notes. She did not need to. She would remember every word. When Jasmine finished, the room was quiet. The water cooler hummed. "Jasmine," Imani said, "I am going to ask you a question. I want you to think before you answer. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "How long have you worked here?" 2 years and 4 months. "What is your title?" "Finance and insurance specialist." "What did you do before this?" "I was a teller at a credit union. Before that, I was finishing my associate degree in business administration." Imani nodded slowly. "Here is my question. If I asked you to walk back onto that showroom floor right now and stand beside me while I dismantled the leadership of this building, would you do it?" Jasmine's eyes widened. "Beside you, beside me, as a witness, as a voice, as someone the remaining employees will see standing with the owner of this company while I make it very clear what kind of dealership this will be from this day forward." Jasmine's hand went to her chest. "Yes, ma'am," she whispered. "I would do it." Imani stood up. She extended her hand across the table. "Then let's go to work." The walk back down the hallway felt different. Imani walked first. Jasmine walked just behind her, then beside her, her shoulders pulled back, her chin lifted. Marcus and the legal team fell in behind them. By the time they reached the showroom floor, the small group looked less like visitors and more like a tide that had decided to come in. The entire dealership had been quietly gathered. Lynn had done that in the last 12 minutes. Every employee from the showroom, the finance office, the service bays, the detail crew, the receptionists, 47 people in total. They stood in a loose semicircle near the Rolls-Royce by the window. Brett Donovan stood off to one side, slightly apart, his hands clasped in front of him. Gregory Hansen stood near him. The young salesman in the navy suit, whose name was apparently Cody, stood at the back, his face a sickly shade of white. Imani stopped in the center of the showroom. She did not climb on anything. She did not raise her voice. She simply stood, and the room fell quiet around her. "My name is Imani Caldwell," she said. "Many of you have never met me. Some of you may not have known I existed. That is my fault as much as anyone's. I have spent the last 6 years building 35 dealerships, and in the process, I allowed myself to become a name on a building instead of a presence in it. That changes today." She let her eyes move across the room. 3 weeks ago, I received a letter from a former employee of this location, a young man named Andre Williams. Some of you remember him. He told me what it was like to work here. He told me the truth. And the truth was so painful that I came here this morning, dressed exactly as you saw me, to see for myself whether what he wrote was real. She paused. It was real. A small ripple moved through the gathered employees. A woman near the back put her hand over her mouth. "For the last 47 minutes, I have stood in this showroom as a customer. I was ignored by 4 salespeople. I was insulted by your general manager, who twice told me to stop wasting his time and who threatened to call the police on me for sitting in a chair. The only person on this floor who saw me as a human being was Jasmine Reed." Imani turned slightly. She put her hand on Jasmine's shoulder. "Jasmine works in finance. She is not a salesperson. She approached me when no one else would. She offered me a chair. She walked me to that Rolls-Royce. She answered my questions. She treated me, in her own words, like a customer, like a person. For that, she was pulled off the floor by Mr. Donovan and threatened with discipline." The silence in the room had a weight to it now. As of this moment, Mr. Donovan is no longer the general manager of this dealership. Brett made a small sound in his throat. It was not a word. It was something smaller than a word. "Mr. Hansen is no longer the senior sales associate of this dealership." Gregory Hansen's knees seemed to lose some of their starch. He reached out and steadied himself on the hood of a parked Maserati. "Both terminations are effective immediately for documented and repeated violations of company conduct policy, discriminatory customer service practices, and creation of a hostile work environment. Patricia from my legal team will meet with each of you separately in the next 30 minutes. You will be escorted to your offices to collect personal belongings. Company property, including phones, laptops, and key cards, will be surrendered before you leave the building. Severance will be discussed through proper channels. Do not attempt to contact employees, customers, or vendors of this company after you leave today." Brett's voice came out cracked. "Mrs. Caldwell, please. I have not finished speaking, Mr. Donovan." He went silent. Imani turned to the rest of the staff. "To everyone else in this room, you are not in trouble, you are not being punished. But you are being asked starting today to look honestly at the culture that was built around you and to decide whether you participated in it or simply tolerated it. Both have a cost, both will be addressed." She paused. "And one more thing." Every head leaned in slightly. "Jasmine Reed," Imani said. Jasmine looked up. Her eyes were wide. "As of this moment, you are the acting general manager of the Houston flagship dealership of Caldwell Automotive Group." The room went absolutely still. 47 faces turned in unison toward the young woman with the loose ponytail and the crooked name tag. Jasmine's mouth opened. No sound came out. "This is a probationary appointment for 90 days, Imani continued. "During that time, you will work directly with Marcus Whitfield, our Chief Operating Officer, and with a leadership coach from our corporate office. At the end of 90 days, your performance will be reviewed by me personally. If you have done the work, the appointment will become permanent. Your salary, effective today, is being adjusted to reflect the new role. The numbers will be on your desk by tomorrow morning." Jasmine's hand had risen halfway to her mouth and stopped there, frozen in the air. "Mrs. Caldwell," she said, and her voice was barely above a whisper, I don't have a 4-year degree. I don't have management experience. You have integrity," Imani said. "You have the courage to walk toward a stranger when 40 other people are walking away. You have a working knowledge of every department in this building because you have been quietly doing pieces of all of their jobs for 2 years and 4 months. The rest can be taught. Integrity cannot." Imani turned back to the room. "I understand that some of you may have questions about this decision. I understand that some of you may believe that other employees with longer tenures or more impressive titles are more qualified for this role. I want to be very clear with you. Tenure in a broken system is not a qualification. Comfort within a broken system is not a qualification. The people who knew exactly what was happening in this building and said nothing, the people who watched Mr. Donovan speak to customers the way he spoke to me this morning and turned their faces away, those people are not the leaders of what this dealership is about to become." Her eyes moved across the room. "Some of you are going to leave this company in the next 6 months. That is your right. I would rather you leave than stay and resent the changes that are coming. Some of you are going to stay and surprise yourselves. Some of you are going to do the hardest thing a person can do, which is to look honestly at your own behavior and decide to be different tomorrow than you were yesterday. I will help you do that. I will pay for the training. I will pay for the coaching. I will be present in this building and in every building that bears my name in a way that I have not been present for the last 6 years." She paused. "There is one more name I want to mention before I let you go back to your work." The room held its breath. Andre Williams, the young man who wrote the letter. Without him, none of this happens today. Without him, I am still sitting in a beach house in Galveston, believing that the company I built is being run by people who share its values. Andre lost his job here because he tried to do the right thing. As of tomorrow morning, my legal team will be reaching out to him with an offer. The offer will include a senior sales position at this dealership, full back pay for every month he was unemployed after leaving us, and a personal apology that I will deliver to him myself." A small, soft sound moved through the gathered employees. It might have been the beginning of applause. Imani held up a hand. "Please, not for me. There is nothing to applaud here. A company does not deserve credit for finally doing what it should have been doing all along. Save your appreciation for the people who actually earned it today. For Jasmine, for Andre, for every customer who walked out of this building over the last 9 years feeling smaller than they walked in. They are the ones we owe something to." She turned to Marcus. "Begin the transitions, please." "Yes, ma'am." The room began to move. Patricia from legal walked toward Brett Donovan with a folder in her hand. Brett's shoulders sagged as if a wire holding him up had finally been cut. Gregory Hansen was already being led toward the back offices. Imani turned to Jasmine. "Come with me," she said. "We have work to do." 2 hours later, the showroom had emptied of its old leadership. Brett Donovan had walked out of the building carrying a cardboard box of personal items, his shoulders rounded, his eyes on the pavement. Gregory Hansen had left through a side door without speaking to anyone. Cody, the young salesman in the navy suit, had asked Patricia from legal if he could speak with Mrs. Caldwell privately before he was sent home for the day. Patricia had relayed the request. Imani had agreed. Cody had walked into the small back room with his hands trembling and his face the color of old milk. He had sat down across from Imani, and then, instead of defending himself, he had simply said, "I knew it was wrong. Every day I walked in here, I knew it was wrong, and I went along with it because I was scared of him. I am 24 years old and this is my first real job, and I was so scared of losing it that I let myself become someone I don't like." He had not asked to keep his job. He had asked for a second chance to be a different kind of employee. Imani had studied him for a long moment. Then she had said, "You will be placed on a 60-day probationary period. You will complete the same coaching program as the remaining staff. You will write a personal letter of apology to Andre Williams in your own words, and you will hand-deliver it. If at the end of 60 days Jasmine Reed believes you have earned your place in this building, you stay. If she does not, you go. Is that fair?" Cody had nodded so hard she thought he might hurt his neck. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am." That had been the last conversation of the long afternoon. Now Imani stood by the front window of the showroom, beside the Rolls-Royce Phantom, looking out at the parking lot. The Houston sky was turning the color of warm copper. The lot was nearly empty. Most of the staff had been sent home to process the day and return tomorrow. Jasmine stood beside her. She had taken off her name tag at some point. She did not need it anymore. Tomorrow she would have a new one. "Mrs. Caldwell," Jasmine said quietly. "Imani, please." "Imani." Jasmine took a slow breath. "Why me?" Imani did not answer right away. She watched a single car pull out of the parking lot and turn onto the access road. "When I was 26 years old," she said, "I walked into a Mercedes dealership in Dallas with my husband. We had just signed our first major contract. We had the money for the car. I was wearing jeans and a t-shirt because we had been moving boxes all morning. The salesman walked us straight to the used lot without asking what we were looking for. When my husband, who is white, mentioned that we were interested in a new S-Class, the salesman laughed. He actually laughed. He said, and I remember this exactly, he said, 'Sir, perhaps your wife would be more comfortable looking at something a bit more in our financing range.'" Jasmine's jaw set. "We bought the car from another dealership across town that afternoon. Cash. I have remembered that laugh for 23 years. I have built an entire company around the idea that no one who walks into one of my buildings should ever hear a laugh like that. And today I walked into the most successful dealership in my own company and I heard it again. Not as a laugh, as a sentence. 'Stop wasting my time.'" She turned to Jasmine. "You did not laugh. You did not turn away. You asked my name. That is why you—" Jasmine's eyes were shining, but she did not cry this time. She just nodded. Imani picked up her baseball cap from the small table where she had left it hours ago. She turned it over in her hands. "6 minutes," she said softly. "Ma'am, it took 6 minutes of sitting in that chair before someone treated me like a person. 6 minutes. That is the measure of a building, not the cars, not the marble. 6 minutes." She set the cap back down on the table. "Tomorrow, Jasmine, we start over." Outside, the sky deepened toward dusk. Inside, beneath the name on the building, a different kind of company was about to be born. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories about dignity, justice, and the quiet courage it takes to be seen. Drop a comment below. At what moment did you know everything was about to change? We read every single one.